Are you sorry? Are you heartfully sorry for all of your sin? It does not matter. For tonight is time for your just punishments. Hello, and welcome to Just Punishments, Southgate Media's newest Netflix podcast. With me, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and as always, my skinny rich friend,
it's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Glad you're here, as always. So tonight we are starting our Punisher podcast titled Just Punishments. Or maybe Just Punishments. I'm not sure. Depends on your take on things. But this is not a punishing show to watch so far, anyway. Maz and I have only watched the first episode, so we have no spoilers except for that first episode, 3 a.m. Okay. And we open up with basically the Punisher doing a little mop up. Let's see here. He starts off with, I believe, the last of the kitchen Irish in the men's room at LaGuardia, if I'm not mistaken there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it starts off with a really interesting sort of because the flashback seemed to be a big thing here, and it's going to permeate the entire series. So there's a nice little moment where he's teaching his daughter guitar, and then he's playing by himself. And I don't know if that was supposed to be like a cell or in his own mind, if we were given like a glimpse into his inner space, whatnot. But yes, and then of course he goes and punishes some people pretty violently.
Yeah. Well, he does. Yes, he does take out the last of the kitchen Irish using the hero's cloak of invisibility, where it doesn't matter how violently you kill someone in a very public location, you can just walk out and no one notices. And then,
and then we're transported to Juarez,
Mexico, and
indeed.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a little suspect on the logistics of this shot, that he would be high enough up that the shot could have gone that far. I mean, you can shoot that far, certainly. But you'd have to be kind of up on a mountainside to shoot
because of the downward pull of gravity.
Well, exactly. And then there has to be
at a distance that far?
Yeah, there has to be no obstructions in that path, So, see, if Trump had built that wall, that drug dealer would be alive today. That's what you can certainly say.
Right. What I did appreciate, though, was the time it took for the bullet to travel from the muzzle of his gun to its target. Because at first you hear the gun go off and you're like, did he miss? But then, like a half a second later, the bullet enters the window and explodes the back of the guy's head. And I thought that was a really good touch. In most TV shows, it's just instant, pop, pop, and the guy's down. I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, I think they do just enough research on this show.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not sure of the actual terrain issue there, because basically that means that there has to be no building on the other side of the street. So he's got to be in a building facing the border with no other buildings between that building and the border for that shot to work. But aside from that, it's a great shot and it's a beautiful scene and of course makes the point that you are not safe. That even if you go to Mexico, you're not safe, All these people are trying to run. All you're doing is annoying him.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And then interestingly enough, he goes and burns the skull vest, which I thought was interesting. And then obviously it's revealed that he has killed off that Punisher persona.
Well, exactly. He has done that, and he decides to go. And again, this is one of these things. There's a lot of things in this that are visually striking. And I think him demolishing that wall is very visually striking.
Right.
But the only issue for me with that is, are they building this building or tearing it down?
That's a good point.
And it seems like they're building this building, and yet he's taking out this cinder block wall. That seems like a relatively fresh, new cinder block wall.
Right. And no other construction worker there is tasked with doing anything that is demolishing anything. He's the only one, and he's got his lonely little wall.
Yeah. I mean,
and it is
visually,
interesting.
I know what they're going for there.
Right.
It's him hammering at the wall. You have the hammer, which, of course, in the Marvel universe has so many implications and about worthiness and things like that. And it is just him hitting the wall repeatedly as sort of his own. And for what it's worth, I think there's kind of a parallel in him doing this work and punishing his body as sort of and I think of flagellation, and this idea that to cleanse himself of sin, he must experience pain, and he's putting his body through this pain because he does feel all this sin for all the people he killed.
Right.
He's punishing them.
And he knows he was wrong.
Well, if not wrong.
As far as what he did in the war, I thought that's what you were referencing.
Well, I mean, possibly, but I think that's actually much less of it. I think that might be part of it too. Certainly PTSD is a part of this, but I think he also feels that it's this idea that every person he kills has a family too. And I think there is, and it's not that he's opposed to killing people with families. That's what he does. He has killed lots of people with families.
Everybody's got a family,
Well, exactly. And he's doing and like I said, I may be reading too much into it, but it kind of reminds me, if you saw Boardwalk Empire.
I did not.
Oh, you did not? Okay. Well, there's one of the main characters in that. He actually goes on to play Zod in the.
Oh, yeah, Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon, yeah. So he plays a prohibition enforcement agent. And he's very, very straight-laced, very, very by the book. And one of the things they reveal about him is that every night he goes home and he beats himself, because he's this very hardcore Catholic and he beats himself because he's a flagellist. I believe they may even make some reference to the fact that he's Opus Dei in that.
Right.
Yeah. That's maybe just a rumor about Opus Dei. Oh, you know what I realized? We did not actually do any credits on this episode yet. We got so excited about talking about it. So let's do our credits here. The Punisher, 3 a.m., after exacting revenge on the people responsible for the deaths of his wife and children, Frank Castle uncovers a conspiracy that runs deeper than New York's criminal underworld. Directed by Tom Shankland. Our writers this week are created by Steve Lightfoot, written by Steve Lightfoot. Angela Lamanna is our story editor, and this week's hardest working person in show business, our staff writer, is Ken Christensen. Okay, so that's who we got on this show. So he's having problems with his fellow co-workers. He's having problems with everyone because he has a hard time socializing. And then we get a flip story with Dana Madani, who is just back from Afghanistan. She is some sort of special agent. I don't know what she's a special agent in.
I think it was the Department of Homeland Security. That's the agency she walked into, right?
Oh, that is Homeland Security? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure exactly what
it was a logo on the wall as she exited the elevator.
I must have missed that. Usually they're much better with that branding. And we also see that she has a new partner who is Sam Stein. Yeah, now, I believe Stein is actually, in the original comic book adaptation, I believe Stein was the guy on the Shiza detail, as they say, who was assigned. Basically, he had crossed some people, and he got busted down to the Punisher detail, because the Punisher detail, as it turns out, no cop cares. The cops don't care because he only kills criminals. So no cop is busting their butt to go find the Punisher, and there's like several scenes where when he's going through the Punisher files, it's like has to go down to the archives, and they're like, yeah, go look for him. But anyway, they're obviously not being that true to the story, because that story takes place deeper into the Punisher's career, whereas this story, it's still very fresh. In fact, the Punisher is just retired. As you said, he burns his vest. And
now, in the comics, is Sam Stein sort of a formidable agent that has just gotten on the wrong side of people, or is he sort of like a bumbling fool that is not very good at his job?
I think they kind of play him in that Columbo way.
Okay.
You get this feeling that he probably is better than he lets on.
Right.
He's also a man who's been beaten down a bit. And he is going up against the Punisher, who is just the best at what he does, and what he does, not very pretty. Okay. So we do see that basically Adana Madani wants to, unearth what is basically the Colonel's heroin system,
right?
Which is apparently still active, even though the Colonel is gone, because it
really wasn't the Colonel's bag. It was really the armed forces bag. I'm sure the order for heroin production and trafficking came from much higher above. Because as everybody knows, once we went into Afghanistan, poppy fields and heroin production went up, exponentially. So it wasn't just a few guys trying to make a quick buck.
I'm not going to be that conspiratorial, Mozz, but that's okay.
Well,
and maybe I'm just a pie-eyed optimist. But no, I actually kind of felt that it was the Colonel's bag, but that, quite frankly, because not for nothing, there is actually historical reference to that. There was actually a very good Denzel Washington film where he was basically a guy who went to Nam, and it's basically creates this major heroin trade after he comes back from Nam. Can't remember what it's about, but I can't remember the name of it. But it's a fantastic film. People out there, you know which film I'm talking about. It's great. It's got him and I want to say that guy whose daughter got taken, and then his wife.
Oh, Liam Neeson?
Yeah, I want to say it was Liam Neeson and Denzel Washington. Liam Neeson is the cop, and Denzel Washington is the heroin magnate. But the idea is that sure, the Punisher takes out that guy, but there's you can take out 6 of the top guys. There's still 15 more underneath him. Someone's going to get that heroin back in town now that the road's been been paved clear. Someone's going to keep on walking it.
Right, and it seems like that's the sort of a theme that they're building on here, the futility of his efforts mirrored in him breaking down the wall. It's just, there's always going to be another wall, or like, what is he really doing it for? And I think that's what he's probably struggling with.
Yeah, and I imagine that is what we're looking at here. And we do get a lot of nice flashbacks, although I guess they're possibly even more torturous flashbacks, because he keeps on dreaming of his wife waking him up. I think that's supposed to be like the day that they all are killed, and she's letting him sleep in, and all that.
10:30 seems to come up often.
Yeah, and in fact, we get a little bit of that story with Donald, who's the one guy who reaches out to him, and again, it's the same idea that his dad was a Marine, did 3 tours, came home and got kept by a drunk driver. That faces all this death out there in the world, and then comes home, and all of a sudden, not so much,
Right.
Which makes for as so many things do, a beautiful story.
Right. And Lewis sort of at the group therapy session mirrors those same sentiments. I fought for this country, and now it has no place for me.
Well, yeah, and we get our MAGA guys there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not for nothing. Some of those lighter toned fellows there, they certainly gave you the impression that they were, just alt to the right of people, And
right.
But they're all soldiers, and they're all here together.
Right.
And one imagines that soldier status is what's going to allow them all to look past, you know, that the guys who are of that alt right look, they're going to stand, they're going to look past their buddies, whatever skin color or whatever, and then the other guys are looking past who they know these guys are, at least in this room.
Right. Right. And in their eyes, that's one of the good ones.
Well, exactly. On both sides.
Yeah.
There are good people on both sides, to quote our illustrious fearless leader.
No. What I meant was from the perspective of the MAGA dude. He got along with the darker skinned fellows in his company at the moment, but at the same time, his thought process is probably that's one of the good ones. Yeah, but he still holds his feelings dear about what he feels about the race at large.
Yeah, but again, like I'm saying, that then the flip side of that is that's what they do as well.
Right.
That they see him as, basically they all see each other as their poor lost brother, and they don't want to shut them up. And there is an effort to humanize everyone in that kind of context.
Right.
Although not too much, because they really did not play those guys up as that sympathetic, except for that point that they fought for their country and they don't feel like their country's there for them, which has been true since the pension riots of the early 1900s. Actually, no, I'm sorry, the late 1800s, when the Civil War vets marched down Washington and created a camp to demand, their rightful pensions, and I believe it was Blackjack Pershing came in and murdered him on the White House lawn.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's a very dark. This show is going to get a little dark, kids. This is not Sweet Christmas. Yeah. It's Mozz, it's Chaz. This is just punishments. Okay. So we got there's a group of bullies, and we've got, so basically our group dynamics here. We have, of course, the crew at the we've got the army guys in the meeting. We got the one guy who I think he was in Frank's unit, because he totally knows who Frank is. He says he would have helped him if he'd asked.
Right. I think he was probably a subordinate of Frank, because he calls him lieutenant at one point.
Yeah, well, he was a lieutenant.
So,
yeah.
No, but I'm wondering if he called him that because he served under him.
It's entirely possible, or it could be that actually, he's not calling him sir, he's calling him lieutenant. That could imply that he actually was, a equal in status, I'm not sure the exact protocol in the military. I did not serve, sadly. So, yeah. I always had someone try to talk me out of it every time I wanted to enlist, But that's a whole other story. That's my own personal regrets. I mean, honestly, probably, long story short, there may be better things for me, and maybe, I was probably always too fat to enlist anyway, I've been fat a lot, But anyway, moving right along.
But I do want to highlight the really great story that Kurt tells to start off the group session about the hole and the guy being in the hole and nobody can help him, and the only one that can help him is a fellow soldier, a brother that's been there and knows how to get out.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of plays towards the end of this episode a lot too.
Well, yeah, because everybody winds up in a hole.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the other dynamic in this story is the construction crew, and we've got basically
Lance and
Paulie, and they're basically the bullies, and they don't like Frank because he's keeps on hitting this wall and doing all this overtime that no one's paying him for. Which, I guess, an interesting thing to throw back to that MAGA idea again, about the people who, show up and just, work under the table and drive down the wages for everybody else. Weird little parallel to it there, and much like an illegal immigrant, Frank is probably off the books. He's probably very much, not in a position to raise any hackles, and probably the people employing him know that and take advantage.
Right.
Although
I don't think the bullies are aware of who he really is or what he really is.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, if you were aware of who he was, you would not be.
Well, no, I don't mean as the Punisher, but I just mean as a former Marine.
Yeah. No, they think he's some kind of head case,
Yeah.
They think he's somewhere or another mental, and they think he's showing up and making them all look bad. And we find out that basically we see that Donald, lovable Donald, he just wants someone to be his friend. He is so lonely. Takes care of his grandmom, who's been raising him since his dad died, and obviously never had close associations. And excuse me. Now he's trying to find a place with these guys, the bullies, and they sort of let him sit in the back. But after they, are being very mean to Frank, he decides he's going to go talk to Frank. And Frank basically makes the point, I come up here because no one else is here. But he's doing his puppy dog routine where he's like, oh, hey, let me talk to you. Let me tell you my story. And, my grandma makes the best sandwiches. Here's your sandwich, because he saw that his PB&J got stepped on. And he's just being a real sweet guy. But then, of course, later, we find out that, of course, he gets to go along with the guys to go drinking, and then they stick him with the tab because he says he's buying. And, of course, he meant the first round, and they just bring up the tab. And I knew the second I heard the guy say, yeah, 5 more shots and all that. It's like, oh, boy.
Yeah.
They're going to stick him with the tab. Yeah. And they stick him with the tab. But, for what it's worth, he had the cash to pay it, so that's good. But, that's probably grandma's dead money.
Yeah.
And, and part of that, you kind of can imagine this is just sort of hazing, and maybe he would be accepted after that. But we don't get to that point, really, because next thing that we see happen is there's an accident at work because, no one can decide if they're building this building or tearing it down. And something falls on the wheel or one of the guys from their crew, and it, slices his arm open. And they run to Frank saying, hey, come on, you were like a Marine, right? So you must know first aid or something.
Yeah, which was a very bold thing to do after he confided in you, a guy that doesn't talk at all and clearly doesn't want anybody to know his business. For him to shout it out like that was really, really like a stupid move to make. And you see Lance's reaction when he mentions that. He's like, wait a second, what? What did he just say? You were a Marine? That sort of unsettles him a little bit. It changes his perspective on who he is.
Yeah. But, of course, Frank walks away. Didn't realize that was Donnie who said that. Okay, that was that.
Yeah, Donnie's the one who says, you were a Marine, weren't you? Because he's the only one who knew.
I thought maybe some of the other ones, because I thought they saw that he had the bullet scar, so. Yeah. But anyway, either way, he walks away, doesn't help the guy. And honestly, it's a big assumption that he might know, field, medicine any more than any Boy Scout might, It's like, I don't know, put a tourniquet on it. Or more to the point, get that guy to a freaking hospital right away. Don't ask me to save him. Get him the freak out of here. But after that, we find out the guy with the fancy car, he's in over his head to the Nucci crime family, who I guess while the Punisher is away have sort of grabbed up their the scraps. Now that now that
the competing families are gone.
All of them are gone. Someone's got to take it. So the Nucci's have taken it. and they're very feared. And they decide they're going to knock over the Nucci's card game. When the guy's arm gets injured, they need an extra guy, so they pull in Donnie because he just wants to please. And I kind of find it hard to feel sorry for them in this because really Donnie was not a guy to bring in on this. This was clearly not a guy who, honestly, I think you'd be better to get Frank for that. Now, of course, Frank had heard them talking about it too, about this crime.
Right.
It might have been a thing after they found out he used to be a Marine and says, hey, you know what? We can get you some scratch. Everyone needs scratch. And it's not like these are good people. These are criminals, The worst he might have said is, I don't do that. But, but they get Donnie in on it, and then they don't tell Donnie what they're doing till they're actually there. I get the idea that they need to keep secrets, but at the same time, then, no one's really checking Donnie. And you can see Donnie is about to throw up the entire time that they're hitting this card game. And while they're gathering up the money, Donnie's wallet falls out. I actually think this was in the comic book. I actually think this scene might have been in the comic book.
Really?
I think so. As I'm saying it, I see the pictures in my head, but that could also just be my mind creating that comic book for it.
Right.
But the wallet falls out, and everyone sees. They say, "Oh," and the mob guy there says, "Oh, Donald, you're in trouble." Now, of course, what's funny there is that they don't just shoot the guy who they have the gun on right there. Anyway, it's like, and not for nothing. It was pretty clear that these guys weren't going to shoot anyone. Right. So I'm surprised that the mobsters are even just letting it continue like that. But they let it go because it helps the story. And as they're running, they go back to the construction site. Did you want to make a point?
No.
They go back to the construction site, and the other guy's like, we got to kill Donnie. That's the only thing we can do. We got to kill him. Because he can tie it back to us. Now, of course, killing him at the construction site, unless someone's going to think he was the mastermind, it's still getting tied back to you all.
Right, but I think with the plan they had, the body would never be found. If they were going to put him into the foundation of this building, nobody would ever find that body.
Yeah. I mean, that I guess was the idea. And they load up the mixture, and they throw Donnie in, and then the Punisher comes up to sort of see what's going on. And
luckily, because he was working overtime.
Of course. Well, he's tearing down his wall. Why is there a wall in the building? I'm guessing they're like refurbishing this, but like I said, it was a brand new wall. I don't know, maybe there's a thing where you actually like build a wall that you then tear down while you're building. Maybe it's like a structural wall.
Oh, maybe that's okay. That makes sense. I could buy that.
We're gonna say that's what they do. I don't know if that's how they build buildings. But, yes, but he's tearing down the wall, and he comes. And they basically get into a fight, and these guys are very sorely outmatched. And the Punisher,
what beautiful, beautiful violence that was.
Oh, it is. I mean, really, for the violence, I mean, this is some great fight choreography. And what I like about it is it's a lot more bare knuckles. It's not martial arts fighting, and it's not superpower fighting. So it's not like what you saw in Iron Fist or Daredevil, where it's all about speed. This is much more about power and precision.
Right.
And I like it's a very different sense of fight that we normally get.
Right, and when he cracks that first guy in the face with the hammer, I'm like, wait a second, there's no way that guy is going to live through that. And then I was like, is he planning on killing these dudes? And then, yes, he is.
Well, I mean, I think that was kind of the point. He's not incapacitated. This is the Punisher. Yeah. This isn't one where this isn't the look, they're still moving at the end of the scene. Right. They're groaning. That means they're still alive. We didn't kill anyone. We're still superheroes. No, this is the Punisher. These guys are dying.
Yeah.
This was them being murdered now.
I think this is the scene where I get my favorite line in this episode, where he grabs the broken hammer and says, "I got to find a place for this." Just like what he said to him. Yeah. Oh, I loved it.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's your superhero quip for the series. Oh
yeah.
And then Punisher throws Donnie, who's still alive, after all the bodies are falling in on him, and that's gonna be a terrifying scene for poor Donnie. Because for all Donnie knows, that's the Nucci's throwing them in.
Interesting. Right, he has no idea.
Yeah, he just knows he got thrown in here to kill him, and then all of a sudden, all these smashed up dead bodies are falling in next to him. And he's like, oh, it's, and then of course the rope comes down, and of course this goes back to that story you were telling about the guy in the hole. And here's this guy, and he gets out of the hole, and he's got the money, and says, "Get out of town."
Yeah.
Oh, I hope Donnie gets through this, although I don't think he does.
Yeah, and I was hoping Donnie would be a recurring character, but I'm guessing at the end it seems like Frank is skipping town, because I guess he has to at this point.
Well,
like that Pete Castiglione persona needs to die.
Yeah. Well, but he goes and he takes. Actually, I guess Donnie maybe gets through it okay, because I mean it's possible Donnie does get through it, because then everyone who knows Donnie, unless the guy picked up the phone and called Nucci right afterwards to say he was hit,
right.
Although he already had called to their guy in the force asking who's this Donald guy, and so he's got the information. So there is a paper trail, but he goes and but the Punisher goes and basically takes care of business, So that's that. And then as he's leaving, we get our first scene with Chip. Because we see Chip covering his tracks. Now,
at first I thought it was going to be the police looking at the security footage or the Nucci family looking at the security footage, but the guy seems really excited about something, and then he says, "Oh, Frank, you're back," and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, and because obviously, because this, remember we had the Chip call out Easter egg at the end of Daredevil season 2, and this guy is apparently Chip. Not sure about this Chip with the big scraggly hipster beard. I liked my Wayne Knight Chip from the previous incarnation. I like the fat nerd Chip, which is how he is in the comics. Not quite Wayne Knight fat, but he was definitely a beer-bellied nerd. Old school computer guy. Should have gotten the guy from the Four Horsemen from X-Files to be Chip. I think that would have been my fantasy casting, but what are you going to do? The bald guy, the little pot belly, would have been great. But, yes. So, in fact, I think that's who the original artist based the character on. But I can't be certain of that.
Oh, interesting.
I think. He sort of looked like that. But yeah, that was, like if you read the old Punisher war journals, that's sort of how they draw Chip. Anyway, so Punisher's walking out, and we see the security footage, and we see this guy, and we see Chip. He's finding footage to lay over this thing, so he's covering the Punisher's track. That's what
is that what he was doing? I didn't catch that.
That's what I thought he was doing. That's what it looked like.
Interesting.
And I think the implication is that while Frank was out there doing his one-man war on crime, he had help from Chip. And Chip is still out there, even though he says, "I'm done." Chip is still keeping his ear to the ground for his old buddy Frank.
Right, and that's probably how he can indiscriminately kill in public spaces and get away with it.
Yeah, well, that would make it. There we go. The cloak of the hero helps if you got Chip deleting the security footage. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that I would like to highlight is Dina Madani's character and how they're mirroring her story with Frank's own story. Her partner was killed for trying to do the right thing, and now she's on this crusade almost to figure out what's going on, and she's getting a lot of resistance from the people she thought were supposed to be on the same side.
Yes, and she is certainly she is yeah. I mean, I think that she is definitely in in the
A
same
kindred soul
headspace
on
as
the other
Punisher.
side of the fence.
Yeah, I think all these characters are in their own way. Actually, I think Donna Madani might have been in that book too, because I do remember Sam getting a partner in that.
Now, is it Dinah or is it Dina?
Well, Dinah, I would pronounce Dinah, but I guess it could be Dina.
Interesting.
I'm not sure how they pronounced it because it's been a couple days since I watched the episode, so we'll hear it a few more times as we watch. But no, she's a great character. I love that she's from money, and her mom's a psychiatrist, and they have the $100 bottles of wine, and Dinah has a drinking problem, clearly.
Right, but she doesn't have the trappings of growing up with money. Like her parents didn't come from money; they built everything for themselves. So she has that spirit of the immigrant spirit.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
So it's not like she's like a spoiled rich girl, but she's sort of like an accomplished woman.
Well, she's an accomplished woman, although it's easier to be accomplished if first you're spoiled.
Right. But I feel like she's got a good head on her shoulders, and she knows
she's
right.
Got a great head on her
she's fighting for the right things.
She's a spoiled rich girl by any stretch of means, but it is interesting to see where she comes from and where she's put herself.
Yeah.
And that's good. She's a very type A personality, very driven.
Yeah.
And I think her and Sam are going to be a nice pairing. I'm really looking forward to that.
Right. I'm interested to see what Sam is all about, whether he is up to snuff or not, because I got a feeling he's going to be very, very tactful and very smart.
Yeah. Well, I think he is a man who plays on underestimation. No better way to be if you're in a position where if you're a civil servant trying to convince people to chip up, no better way than to be completely underestimated. Anyway, yeah, so that was our first episode 3 a.m.
One question I had for you. The guy that he killed in the bathroom in the opening scene, he was saying something interesting. He's saying, tell Dublin that there's going to be a party or something. What do you think he meant by that? Is it because I remember there was didn't somebody get called Dublin in the Daredevil series?
Oh. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, Dublin, of course, is a major.
Oh, but maybe. So maybe it was just the home base.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right.
Oh, fun fact. This is my own personal thoughts and theories. With Brexit, the Irish mob is going to get huge.
Because all the financial institutions.
Border between England and the rest of Europe. So it's going to be this major location, the Northern Ireland unsecured border. It's going to be this major traffic location for smuggled goods from Europe to England, from England to Europe, and all points in between. So watch for it in coming years for the Irish mob to make a big comeback. Mark my words.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just something I've been thinking about because, anytime you have one of those really easy to pass unsecured borders, you tend to, if you can get stuff in somewhere and then get stuff out easily, not for nothing, that's,
I hope it's not a tremendous detriment for the city of Dublin.
Well, yeah. Oh, well, it all depends on how organized the crime is, as they say.
Right.
Yeah. But we'll see what happens. But that is the entire episode. I'm very excited about this series. I can't promise I'm not going to watch ahead at some point, but right now I just watched the first episode, and I've been so busy I don't think I can watch more than one episode a week. So we're going to see what happens. But I really like this first episode. I really like all our characters. Thought they all had great introductions, and I can't wait to see what happens next. What are your thoughts, Mozz?
Yeah, I loved the pacing. I love how they're taking their time, letting you get to know all the characters, all the important players, the subtle little things like Kurt's limp. And I'm really excited to see where the character of Lewis goes, because I don't know if you saw, what was it, 11/22/64? That show on Hulu about the Stephen King novel about the Kennedy assassination and time travel.
Oh.
That guy played Lee Harvey Oswald, and he was phenomenal in that. So I'm really interested to see where that character goes.
Will be interesting. Yeah, I don't have Hulu at the moment, so I may be getting it back because I think we're gonna cut the cord just for cost saving measures soon. So I'll probably have to join up with Hulu, but at least you get that first month free.
Yeah. Hey.
Yes. Okay. So Mozz, if people would like to talk to you about The Punisher, about long-range rifle shooting, or anything else, how can they find you?
Yeah, they can reach me via email at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. It's MOZZMANZOOR. And
of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Paz once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and other such things as I so darn well feel fit. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Your friends, your sins for the evening have been paid for. But join us next week, where you will surely sin again, and you will need more just punishments.